Hello, Oracles, and welcome back. Tonight we are having on Brian from My Tesla Weekend. Brian, thank you for joining us tonight. So tonight, and I apologize, I know I haven't been on here in a while. I'm getting over the plague, aka just basic man sickness. But hey, I'm single, and man sickness hurts a lot. So I got nobody to take care of me but me. So thank you guys all for being patient. And so got some great news. I mean, today we're going to be discussing some delivery numbers. I know if Karav is on, and hey, yeah, there he is. So we'll discuss what his updated numbers are. And we got Moody's rating to, what was it, Brian? AAA plus, was that?
BAAA 3, I think.
So there is no longer a split rating. Now Tesla is investor grade for both Moody's and the S&P. So, you know, as far as investing goes, looking at it from an institutional standpoint, more institutions will be getting into the stock, just as we have been seeing already from the S&P upgrade. Now we'll see even more. So regardless of the fact that maybe Moody's is irrelevant, it's going to make a difference on the investor side of things. But Brian here is going to be discussing some of his numbers. Brian, thank you for joining us tonight. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing good. It's so good to see you. We were just discussing a minute ago. It's been too long.
Yes, it is. And as you guys know, last week I said I'm going to be doing a lot more live streams, most of them. And Brian has an open invitation to whatever one he wants to. So you guys will be seeing a lot more of us together. And I'm looking forward to that.
So I think it'd be fun to talk about the ratings real quick because the numbers are so exciting. We got to wait for some more people to show up. It's too much fun. So the ratings, there's all these different levels, and they all make kind of no sense at all, in my opinion. They're intentionally complicated. If they just did a percent score, it would make more sense. But then why would you pay these people for that?
Right.
So yeah, they make it complicated. And I want to say it's BAAA 3 is what it upgraded to, which makes it the lowest tier of investment grade. And when I interviewed Alexandra Mertz a while back, she explained, I said, what should the rating be? And she said AAA. It should just be the top.
Exactly.
Because they've got endless cash. They're cash flow positive. The products are ramping like crazy. The margins have remained fat through thick and thin. They're firing on, what would the electricity version of all cylinders be? Every cell, thousands of them.
Firing on all motors? I don't know.
Yeah, they're plaid, or as I call it, 2 in the trunk, 1 in the frunk. I think that's what I call it. Anyway, so this upgrade at least gets them to investment grade. And you said this will have an impact on the stock. And unlike being included in the S&P 500, which was a trigger that automatically resulted in a big inflow of cash, this will be a bit more muted. This will take months or even years to be fully realized. But there are investment agencies, there are pension funds and fund managers who have rules that they've set in place for themselves to not touch something unless it is investment grade. They will now have the option to buy Tesla stock.
Yeah, and what I liked about it, because like as Alexandra had explained it when we discussed it back in October, is like you said, like the S&P inclusion, that was hey, by the end of the day, you are required to purchase X number percentage of the stock. That's why it shot up so fast. In this case,
it's a tracking index. It's got to track.
Right. In this case here, it's actually a much better version of that because it's going to create a long-term, more solid foundation for the stock price over the long term. So it's not going to be an instant, shoot up in the stock price. It's just going to be a much more solid, steady growth. And this is, I think, a better thing in the long run.
Agree entirely. If anyone's got questions about it in the chat, I see Raymond's comment that Moody's needs to be paid off via some bond arrangement, and that's not entirely incorrect.
Yeah.
So Tim, if you hired me to tell you where to put your money, and then later found out that, by the way, I'm also taking money from them, wouldn't you feel cheated? Wouldn't you consider that a conflict of interest?
Uh-huh.
I'd be livid. Oh, I'd be livid.
Yep, and of course, as Alexandra said herself, it's like it is just it's a dirty game to play, and Apple chose to play it, and you see they went right to AAA rating, and that's what it is, and Tesla just doesn't want to play that game. Very much like advertising, it's similar to the same situation. If you pay to advertise, you're going to have the media portray you in a little bit better light. If you're going to pay to have these credit ratings, you're going to be portrayed in a better light. Money talks to these people, and unfortunately, that's how the game is played.
Unfortunately, it appears so. And if you were going to advertise, at least you get advertisement out of it. Maybe you'd get better margin or move more units. But buying this only impacts the stock price in ways that add no value whatsoever.
Yep, it adds the ability for these arbitrary reasons for institutions to get into the stock. And thinking about the fact that what was SVB rated at?
Yeah, I don't know. What was it? It had to be very high.
It was. I don't know what the actual rating was, but it was definitely well over institution grade rating or investor grade rating. So,
yeah.
And look at what happened to them. Womp womp. Yeah. Well, we'll get into some bank stuff another time. Brian, which I learned today. What did you do in your past, in your previous life?
So I was I was a banker. I worked for Washington Mutual for many years and got to see the inside of the beast. And I know there's a lot of myths about what banks do and what they do right and what they do wrong and what they do wrong on purpose. But a lot of them almost all of them are just myths and how the insurance works and all that. But what I know, what I'm going to share with Tim on a future one is some of the dirty dealings they did and how they got away with it, specifically when it came to buying out their competitors in ways that, looking back, they were legal, but my gosh, were they shady? Just the worst.
And that'll be
How do you grow at that kind of pace without something going on? And how do you avoid being labeled as a monopoly when they absolutely were?
Yeah, and that's actually something that we can, when we discuss it, when we get into it, is those shady dealings going on then were just gray areas and loopholes that people get through. And are there any companies right now, any banks doing it right now?
Yeah. So Hanif wanted to know, was I a comedian? And yes, I was. That was my second career. From about 04, 06-ish, I worked professionally in comedy writing until about 3 years ago.
Nice.
And
that's awesome.
Oh gosh, it was tough. I actually wrote some of the biggest hoaxes of the early aughts for a company out of Florida that did viral marketing. So if you ever saw so there were some good ones. Doggycondoms.com was one of them. We had some. Revengecrabs.com. That was us. Yeah, I wrote that. So we had some real bangers back in the day. It was fun.
Oh man. Let's see what else we have here. A couple of comments we'll go through, and then we'll get into some numbers here. Here we go. Brian and I were actually talking a little bit about the Fed earlier, because banking knowledge and economics are totally different animals. Do you think the Fed's gonna pivot this week?
So what I was telling Tim earlier is, and this was on Twitter, if you don't follow either of us, was that I know banking, but I don't know monetary policy, because as far as I can tell, banking rules are all about regulations, laws, and pretty rigid guidelines. And monetary policy is, from what I can tell, voodoo. So I know it involves cutting off a chicken's head in sacrifice. But other than that, I don't know how it works. And I'm going to tell you, most of the people at the bank, it's like reading tea leaves. You could ask 5 different senior managers at the bank, and they would all have different opinions on what to do and what the impact would be. So I don't try and guess on what the Fed is going to do or what the right thing to do is.
So for me, I kind of just try to look through the tone and listen to the actual words. And all of last year, for basically the last 18 months, everything Jerome Powell has said has been exactly the same, but his tone has changed numerous times. And everything that he has said has been what the Fed has done. So he hasn't really pulled our leg. He just kind of portrayed it in a different light to make us feel a different way. So he either said the same exact words in a hawkish manner or a dovish manner. So either way, it was the same. And now we're looking at, they said the median rate is looking at potentially 5.75 to 6, whereas before it was 5 to 5.25. So with those words that were spoken, I don't feel like they're going to be pivoting anytime soon. He's already said that they're going to be pausing for probably a year before they pivot. So there's a strong chance that we're going to be getting at least a 25 basis point hike tomorrow, probably one or two more 25 basis point hikes, then a pause for probably 9 to 12 months, and then a pivot. That's my take on it. And they really have held steady to that. So
now when you say they've used the same words, but a different tone of voice, and now it means something different, can we agree that's tea leaves?
Oh, absolutely. That's tea leaves. And that to me is manipulation. And part of me feels like they almost have to do it intentionally, because if the market gets too carried away in one direction or the other, it can cause their plan and their strategy to not actually play out the way they want it to. So they kind of have to keep it in check. And that's why we hear a tone change to try and keep these things in check, to keep the market from running up or down in either direction.
I agree completely.
But yeah, trying to play the market off of that, honestly, obviously not financial advice, but let's just listen to their words. Just listen to what they're saying. I mean, realistically, they're probably going to want to get the interest rates above inflation, and inflation right now is at 6%. So based upon the progress we've been making over the next 2 to 3 months, they raise it 75 basis points more. They will have interest rates above inflation and then can squash it from there.
So Thomas has a good question there. What are our thoughts on regulators clawing back money from bank executives that sold stock days before the banks failed? I don't think it's going to happen. Those sales were scheduled well in advance, and they weren't unusual sales. They were consistent with previous sales the bank executives had made. If you look at Drew Baglino at Tesla, he has regularly scheduled sales. If all of a sudden tomorrow Tesla tanked and Drew Baglino had a sale 2 days before that, that wouldn't be proof of malfeasance. It's just in line with what he's always done, and it's scheduled. Could they do it on the basis of unusual circumstances? I don't believe so. When all these sales were probably scheduled a month, 2 months, 3 months ago, the bank was on much better footing. And the real problem was that the $20 billion, $30 billion they had cash on hand, which should have been sufficient liquidity, was not enough to withstand a run on the banks. No bank has enough cash on hand to survive a run. That's the whole nature of the beast. And I don't think they knew that was coming. I don't think there was any reasonable expectation that things were going to go south as quickly as they did.
Yeah, and they just happen to be in one of those situations because of what they invest in. That is the domino effect. That house of cards, one falls and everything fell underneath it. And that's exactly what happened. So,
yeah, the Fed raising rates made money cost more, and banks generally invest in long-term securities, very safe, stable stuff. But if rates go up too quickly, they can find themselves in a pinch, which is exactly what happened. And they had to sell some of those long-term bonds with a prepayment penalty that made the assets negative in a mark-to-market fashion in ways that the bank was not able to withstand.
Yeah, and then going back to the sales, it's similar to when Elon made his sales back at the end of 2021, and everybody was losing their mind. But all of those were just pre-planned sales, and they were planned 3 months ahead of time. So they were just scheduled to go out. That was it, and he made those sales. And that's how it works with these guys. And like Brian said, you have to look at how the Form 4 was filed for them. What is it? A 5-B1 or man, I keep forgetting how they list that, but whatever it is, it's a different, it's a scheduled sale versus just a direct sale. And that's the difference. All right, let's get into the fun part of the evening, deliveries for Tesla. So Brian, here we are coming into the last 2 weeks of the month. This is the time of the quarter where we're going to see a lot of analyst ratings and updates getting changed. So where are your delivery numbers? Because we're going to be seeing a bunch of delivery ratings from delivery estimates from them coming out changing as well.
Sure. Well, I'll give you a range. It's going to be between, I believe, 440 and 450.
Okay.
And the number I put up just for fun, because I'm not done dialing it in, and I figured you'd want a real number, is 444 420 or 444,
I love it.
469, whichever one you like. So it's a bunch of 4s and a 20 or a 69. But I've seen some numbers that are in the comments. It's lighting up that the numbers are really, really low. And
Yeah,
I'm
we got Troy
talking.
at
So
428, but then Karab says 408. I'm at 430. For you guys who know, just to be honest, I've been so busy. I haven't had a chance to dial in like I normally do, but I do have a general number around 430,000 right now. And my push number, because like Brian said, 444, 4 is my lucky number. So 4s across the board. That is my push.
The thing with Troy is he measures deliveries and I measure production. And
Yes.
my philosophy over time, my two numbers should balance out because they do sell everyone they make eventually. But Troy is often right in the middle of the pack, but about once a year, he just whiffs it. He misses by 5% when the analysts are within 1.5. And the analysts are, and I think you'll agree, pretty stupid. So, and I haven't dialed it in. There are upsides and downsides at each factory, which I assume we'll talk about next. But it's all good news. Wasn't last quarter 439 on production? 405 on production?
405 for deliveries. Production was at 420, 418, something like that.
Let's see if I've got it handy.
Yeah, I don't have it up on mine. Yeah, and so one
439.
439. Okay. So one of the things I actually want to track going forward, knowing how, they're cutting out the wave, but because of how fast production is ramping, are we going to see that the delivery numbers for one quarter are actually the production numbers from the previous quarter? So are we going to see deliveries of 439,000 because production was 439,000 last quarter? Just because we're living in a simulation, that would obviously become true.
So I'd say no on that, because as production ramps at Texas and Berlin and everywhere, it increases localized production, which should help draw down inventory.
Yes.
So,
and then of course those last minute incentives that they throw out, like they did in Europe, to blow out the inventory that they've got there. And we can speculate as to whatever reasons it is. Is it hardware 4? Is it just because they're trying to get inventory out or sales down? Whatever it is, they're moving it. And this is the luxury that Tesla has when it comes to pricing power, is if they feel like they want to move more vehicles for whatever reason, they can just lower the price and move them for whatever reason.
Yeah. So all of that is good. Should we talk about it by factory?
Yes. Yeah, go ahead, because I don't have mine broken down by factory, so I'm interested to hear what you guys have to say. So what do you have?
Oh, I'm not releasing my actual numbers yet.
Okay.
I got to save some juice for my own show.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Don't spill it all here.
No, but we can talk about, let's start with Fremont. How do you think they will do relative to last quarter?
Well, that's a good question. I think Fremont will beat. I think Fremont, especially now that Tom stepped in over there and kind of assessed the situation, I think Fremont will definitely beat.
Yes, it'll definitely beat from last quarter. If you look at the charts we saw on Investor Day, you can see how the productivity per worker per car improved immediately upon his arrival.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of that is organizing and logistics. The first thing he did was looked at the yard and said, we got to clean this up. And that cleaning carried over to inside the factory as well. And there's a lot of just improvements by having all your ducks lined up in row, if you will.
Yep. And also and not only that, but because that's in my business, even though I'm in retail, it's the same thing. It's that production efficiency that reduced a lot of costs as well. And so you can see that direct thing, that direct impact, it's not in sales. It's just by doing those little operational things will add to the bottom line.
Yeah. So you've got, it clears up headspace. It makes the workplace safer. It's just, and Tom is the Magi of Shanghai. He knows what he's doing.
Seriously.
When it comes to that.
There's a reason he is the director of global production right now.
Oh, that's his title. I had it wrong. You're right.
Is it director or whatever it is? But either way,
I had him down as Magi of Shanghai, but you're right.
It's both. Well, it depends on which, at night he's the Magi of Shanghai.
Yeah, I think that's his rap name. The
when he's out with Snoop Dogg.
Yeah.
That's when
Yeah,
he's in Fremont with him.
Yeah, he's got a quick collab with Snoop and Martha Stewart. Weird choice, but I get it. So let's talk about Shanghai. Up or down?
So Shanghai, I think Shanghai is going to be up. Granted, I don't know if production is up because I know that they said they're not going to be pushing to really grow production there, but I'm sure they did anyway. I still think deliveries are going to be up. They dropped the prices enough to really drive it. And over there, that's the really, as far as I can see right now, that's the only place in the world where competition is actually competition. That's it. And it's realistic. And just as Sandy Monroe said, China's going to be the one. China's going to be the Japan of the 70s, and that's going to be China with EVs. And so they are the real competition. But again, that's a good thing for Tesla to have the competition, and they can learn from the competition in China so that when actual competition comes in the rest of the world, they're going to know how to handle it.
And I think the Shanghai may miss to the downside because of Chinese New Year, which is a prolonged closure. The plant doesn't close entirely. There's still a skeleton crew working, paid double, triple time. But this year's work through the holiday appears to have been less rigorous than in past years.
Now, historically, and I don't know if you know this, historically has Q1 in Shanghai, now granted, we can really only go on maybe 2 years of it, has Q1 been better than Q4 or less than Q4?
So I'm just going to go off the top of my head, but it's always been better because it's always been ramping. So the first year it was open, it really got started in a Q1. The next year they just finished the ramp of 3. Then the following year, which would be last year, I guess.
Yeah.
They were just getting started with Model Y. So, yeah, I think it'd be relative and tricky to measure and count.
Okay, that's fair. That's a good point because of the ramping. And now that they've basically stalled ramping, or at least they're not ramping, they're towards the top of their ramp curve. That would make sense. Okay.
Yeah.
So
And there's always more efficiency to squeeze out, and they always do squeeze it out.
But it's not going to be exponential like before.
Like in past years. Yeah.
All right.
So then we've got the next
Berlin.
factory we got Berlin. Up or down?
Oh man, so I think Berlin's going to be down.
It's going to be down?
Well, so it's tough. So now the factory itself or Europe sales, based upon the numbers that we've seen, I think Europe sales will be down. The factory itself will be up, but I think overall Europe sales will be down just because of they don't have the incentives that we have here in the US. They didn't do the same price cuts they did over in China, and they didn't do it until much later in the quarter to just blow out the inventory that they currently had piling up. So the moves that we saw in the inventory coming down were much later in the quarter over in Europe. So that's my take on Europe.
So you're again focusing on deliveries while I'm still thinking production, but the production has to go somewhere.
Production,
so I would say,
without fail, production's up.
Without fail, because it has continued its ramp. And I looked at a bunch of charts today from a clever fella named Tesla Karav, who had some very interesting and encouraging charts regarding Europe sales. So I think it's going to be up. So now let's talk Texas. Up or down?
Texas will be up for sure.
It's up. Yeah. It's up. So what we're looking at, because we've seen the ramp, it's still going. They're still loading in more equipment to improve, to increase the number of lines they're running. And they've got a backlog of castings stockpiled outside the northeast corner. And there's 2 reasons for that. Would you like to know what they are?
Oh, yeah. Please share.
So I had this great video last week about Tesla leaks, because as it turns out, if you don't let me into your factories, I will find any way humanly possible to get information. You guys just keep me preoccupied and I won't have time to dig. I was staying at a hotel near Giga Texas, and there was a large group of people who were working at the factory who did not yet live in Texas. And they were staying at the hotel. They were working at the hotel. And I thought they were there for Investor Day. But when Investor Day came and went, they were still there. They were still meeting constantly. They were still going over things constantly. They were still as excited and as enthusiastic as they were the day before. These people are all in and they're excited to be part of it. What I learned from them is, and when I say what I learned from them, what I sat 10 feet away drinking my coffee and pretending to be on my phone and wrote down in my notes was, I'm just looking like an idiot with my phone. Just, oh, interesting.
With one of those mega horns to your ear. I'm not listening to you guys. Don't worry about
it. Practically, is that the reasons the castings pile up? There are two reasons that it could be. One is what they said is if the line goes down anywhere along the line for any reason, the castings start piling up.
Okay.
Because you do not, that's the one machine you do not shut off. Because if you don't have that piece, everything after it can't happen. Just keep it running no matter what. The second reason that they didn't say that was pointed out to me later is you can't make the castings effectively while you're doing serious construction in there. So they may be preparing or working on the 9,000 ton press, or rather they may be doing serious work on it in a few more days when the stockpile is sufficient to cover a day or two of production while they cut the holes and clean up the dust.
So what you're saying is if we're watching Joe's flyovers and we see that stockpile start dwindling, that means that there's probably some production going on inside, that they're going to be ramping up something else or putting in that 9,000 ton gigapress.
It means one of two things. Either the line has started moving substantially faster or they've shut off the 6,000 ton presses to configure the 9,000 ton press.
Very interesting. So yeah, we'll have to pay attention to that. If you guys are on Twitter, Joe always has his flyovers. Isn't there somebody else who's down there too? I swear there's two guys in Berlin.
Well, Jeff, so Brad Sloan is still out there regularly.
Yep.
Jeff Roberts is out maybe once a week. And that's pretty much it at this point. Is those three? Yeah.
All right.
But Joe is, 2-3 times a week, and he has detailed explanations of what we're looking at, and he'll do research into the labels on crates to determine who they're from and what they do. It's great.
Nice. Oh yeah. And then over in Berlin, Alex is great to follow. And then Wuwa over in China. So if any of you guys are looking for any sort of flyover information or videos, those are the three really to watch. I don't think there's anybody in Fremont because why bother at this point? But
so there is one in Fremont. He's called Met God in Wilderness. He flies once or twice a week, and there's almost never anything to see. You can, if you can see that the yard has gotten a lot cleaner. You can sometimes see models piling up around the racetrack, the test track. And to add to it, there are in Berlin, there's also Berlin Wolfpack, Marty pointed out. And Tobias Lind. And Tobias has started doing...
I forgot about him. Yeah, I didn't know he did flyovers.
Oh, yeah. He started doing narration once a week. Because since they can only fly the perimeter now because Tesla got upset that they were trying to put in solar canopies and sinking 10-foot pilings without permission, without permits. And so they said, no more flying over.
That's how they got seen?
That's what the news article said. Is somebody at the Brandenburg Authority was watching the flyovers and like, that's not supposed to be there. So those are all great. Yeah, Wolfpack. And then in Shanghai, there's also Jason Yang, but I don't know how regularly he's been updating.
Okay. Yeah, and I mean, and those guys are great, and kudos to them. And I actually wonder if at some point in Austin, Boring Company is going to put a tunnel underneath, so they're just going to tunnel the vehicles out, and nobody's going to know where they're coming out, so you have no idea what's actually happening.
It would be very funny if they did, and I wouldn't put it past them. But Boring's got their hands full. They've got a lot of potential projects coming up that they're developing for. They did just finish their second test tunnel connecting the Boring Company to the Starlink factory across the street from it.
Oh, nice. Okay, I knew that they were working on that.
Fun. Yeah, it went super quick, but it was a very short run.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, so just the things that they're working on, and then Elon with his town that he's going to be putting up, So, and then now, is there anybody doing flyovers of the Megapack factories?
No, because the Megapack so the one in Lathrop, there's no flyovers because there's nothing to see. The building was already, they just expanded an existing building, and it was done instantly. There was nothing to see. And in Nevada, no one's really flying it, and it's unfortunate because that's an opportunity. If you live in Nevada, let me know. I will hire you to fly it
Yeah.
because there
Well,
is construction in the 4680 part of Panasonic's building, and there will soon be groundbreaking for the expansion where the semi truck will be built.
right. And we've got that. And then because they're expanding so much with the Megapack factory and knowing how big energy is going to be in the future, knowing how backed up they are already with the lead times on the Megapacks, to be able to see the progress on that is, to me, is pretty important. You know, if we're so excited about the EVs and the EVs are going to end up being the smallest portion of the business come a couple decades from now, we should be just as excited about the Megapacks and doing flyovers for them as well. That's just my
So,
thought.
yeah, so there was footage of what it looks like with them being loaded, where Bradford Ferguson went out and shot some really great footage. Basically, him and a drone pilot sat a half block away and just kept flying over it, counting the packs, watching it load, getting as much information as they could to see what the run rate was. And this is absolutely going to be a massive profit center moving forward.
Oh, yeah.
The margins historically have been a little thin on stationary storage, but that was when they were hand assembled rather than on an assembly line. And the Megapacks used to be cheaper. They've gotten more expensive while battery prices have come down. And they also are selling more of them and selling more of them more quickly because of the increased production.
And knowing what they're doing for EVs and they're on the Gen 3 platform now for vehicles, obviously, I would imagine they're going to be figuring out whatever they can do to do the next generation in production for the Megapacks as well. It just makes logical sense that they're going to be coming up with whatever it is that they're going to do.
And that's funny because in my head, as soon as they got the Lathrop one running, I was like, I said, oh, well, then that's done. Move on to the next thing. But there is no move on to the next thing. When the Super Bottle came out for the Model 3, I said, done. We've got the best heating and cooling in the business. Why would they move on? Well, because Octavalve. We're already on to the next thing, and it's way better.
Oh, yeah. And that's the whole thing. Like when Tesla has Investor Day and they're presenting literally, hey, competition, if you want to do this the way we are doing it, here's all of our information, realizing that that's what Tesla's going to be moving on to now, but they're already thinking about the next step. So even if the competition did take everything that Tesla gave us at Investor Day and said, we're going to do this, it's going to take them at least a year to figure out how to do it themselves, and then another year or two to actually make it happen. Meanwhile, Tesla's already going to be having that up and running, moving on to the next thing. So
most of the EV makers are still benchmarking on the Model 3. Some of them, like Ford, are benchmarking the Model Y, unaware that the Model Y is like 2 years ago. We're already past that. We're on to Cybertruck and Gen 3, which are going to be radically more efficient, simpler, easier to build, quicker to build, cheaper to build. And it's a moving target.
Oh, yeah. And this is exactly why the Chinese competition is going to be the first real competition, because we already know that there are Chinese producers out there right now that are getting gigapresses. Like,
yes,
they're not stupid. They're like, oh, Tesla's producing these vehicles this fast for this cheap, and the big key component was the gigapress. We want some. Duh. Like, why wouldn't you want them? Like,
yeah.
Like, I don't care if it's your competition. Yeah. Like, don't be that arrogant where you're like, well, we're going to do it our own way. Good luck with that. I mean, if you can come up with a better way, then by all means do it. But like, it's just easier to see what somebody else is doing. They're succeeding with it. Cool. We'll succeed with it as well. Thanks.
Yeah. And why not? Why not? Yeah. If it works, it works. But yeah, a lot of people believe, a lot of legacy car companies believe, I know your way is good for you, but our way is better for us. And that's just not how that works.
No, and we were talking about it the other day. It's like the kiss of death is when a company says, we do things the way we do them because that's how we've always done them.
Oh, goodness gracious. That hurts me at a fundamental level.
So PowerPoint here, as a shareholder, I don't appreciate the guessing games. Can we just have a normal monthly production delivery release, please? You know, Brian, that's actually a good question. Why do you think that Shanghai is the only factory that we actually get numbers out of on a monthly basis?
Because I believe they're required to publish them in China.
Oh, okay. That makes total sense then. That's true. This is why Moneyball, if you guys don't follow Moneyball over on Twitter as well, he puts out all the weekly insured numbers. I mean, he's pretty spot on with all the numbers that get sent out and updates all the information for all of the Chinese manufacturers over there. So that makes sense why he's got those numbers, because they have to put them out.
Yeah. So there's a couple questions about why not a Megapack factory in Europe. And I have a short answer for that, which is Germany has incentives. It's well, there's a couple of different ones that kind of added up to that. One of the reasons is Germany had a massive incentive program for battery production, which Tesla was poised to get in on. And then they decided that the terms were too onerous and that it wouldn't make sense, and that would be better to just build it cash and go from there. As a result, a lot of the equipment that was going to be installed in Berlin to get their 4680 line running was diverted to Texas to get theirs running instead, because the incentives were coming for US battery production and not for German battery production. So part of it is the incentives, and part of it is I think they want to get Megapack Lathrop dialed in a little better. And those are third-party cells they're using, CATL, I believe, LFP batteries. It could be that there simply aren't enough of them available yet to be made in the European market, and that once that comes online, it would make sense to build the factory. They built the Megapack factory in Lathrop very quickly, like 8 months, 9 months. It was very quick. And if you think about it, a Megapack is substantially more simple than an automobile.
Right.
For one thing, it doesn't move.
Yeah. there's less parts. It's literally, here's the piece, put a shell on it. Congratulations, you're done.
Yeah. The moving parts are limited to cooling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me see here. Michael, thank you. I appreciate that, sir. Let me see. So actually, you know what? That brings up a great point. Let's move on to future factories. So obviously we know Mexico is now coming. That was kind of, as we got closer, there was a lot of rumors of different factories, what's coming next. And then Mexico was just so excited. They just like, yay, we're coming here, Mexico. Yay. So that's awesome. So now I saw some comments earlier. Obviously Tom Chu is like, hey, you know what? We're going to break ground. It's going to be 9 months. We're going to be up and running. So basically within a year from now, we should see production starting based upon their timeline in Mexico. Do you think that's actually going to hold true?
No. No, I don't. So they'll be breaking ground soon. Tom Zhu said that. The first phase of Shanghai was completed in like 9-10 months. But the first phase of Shanghai was a 1-floor factory for almost all of it. Just there were some offices around the edge that were 2 floors. And if you look at, even with all the lessons learned and all the experience and all the crews ready to go, when they built phase 2 for Model Y, which was a much larger building. Oh, and phase 1 was quite small. It was probably 2.5 million square feet. Phase 2 was more like 6.5 million square feet. They got it done in a year though. And it's it's a big vertical 100-foot tall kind of building. So I think the optimistic figure is 12 months, regardless of what Tom says. I don't think you can get enough workers in there without stepping on each other to get it done in 9 months.
Do you think that we are going to see volume production coming out of Mexico in 2024, or will it be early 2025?
It might be late 24, but I really think it's going to be volume production 25.
Okay.
That's what I'm modeling.
And then what I really am curious about, which now knowing what the next gen platform is going to be and how fast they can produce them, like how fast will they be able to ramp these vehicles versus how fast they're ramping Berlin and Austin, as we know that those obviously were a much slower ramp to get going. Do you think it's going to be faster than Shanghai or somewhere between Austin, Berlin, and Shanghai?
So it's a whole new thing. So there's going to be some kinks to work out.
True.
Remember how the original Model 3 ramp was plagued with slowdowns because they were trying to bite off more than they could chew in terms of automation. So I don't think that's a mistake they're going to make again.
Okay.
I think they're going to have it set up in such a way that it can ramp more quickly, but I don't think they will be going straight to big numbers. I think they'll plan a ramp because they have to get the parts in. And if they plan to go straight to, 50,000 a month or something crazy, they're going to end up with more parts than they have a place to store. So they
That's
could,
true.
yeah.
So that would make total sense for the initial one slowly doing that. But then that also means that as they're learning, the subsequent ramps, subsequent lines that open up for them should ramp much faster because they're going to have those kinks worked out. So that makes sense. Now, moving on to other factories, we were discussing this before we hopped on. Tom already mentioned that they're going to be announcing another factory this year. Where do you think that factory is going to be going?
So in terms, someone asked me why didn't he build a factory in Eastern Europe? There's good value labor there. There's good value engineering. You're still close to the supply lines and suppliers. Why was it Mexico? And I think the answer on Mexico was proximity. We can get all of our people back and forth from Texas on a very short flight to manage the growth. The second one, I think it won't be constrained by that, and they could go anywhere. There's big talk about Indonesia because they have great mineral resource and they have very strong political will. And they've said, we don't want a battery factory. We don't want to make parts, and we're not giving you our dirt. We want to build cars.
We want the whole shebang.
We want the whole shebang or none at all. I would still love to see Giga India because that market is ripe for disruption. A affordable $25,000 car. Well, the average car there is $10,000. Yeah. And when Tesla started selling $60,000 cars, the average car here was 30. So it's not that big of a stretch. And they would have a first mover advantage that would be insane. They would have the branding, the loyalty, all that. And they've got a ton of automotive engineering expertise. They're very good at manufacturing. The question is if they have political will. And as of right now, they do not.
No, they do not want to play ball at all.
At all. Now, they don't want to give up 1 inch. So I would say if it's not Indonesia, I'll go back to my chart that I made, my spreadsheet that weighed all the different factors and say Japan.
So, and that's what I've been hearing too, is Japan was a big one. I know Warren is big on Japan as well. And my thoughts, I agreed with you on India, but when we were first looking at another factory, India was like top of my list for that reason. I was like, I know that sales aren't there, but even if they came up with a factory that was maybe Arcimoto style vehicles that are really more apt for that area. But again, if you have a compact car, that's something that could really take off there and start to move. You know, and thinking about the number of people, it could move very much like a China. Obviously not working. But then when we hear about Indonesia, I'm like, ooh, it makes a lot of sense. They've got the free trade agreement with the US as well. So they still get the EV tax credit incentives from there. They start cranking it out. I'm actually, and I'm going to throw this one out there. I thought it was going to be an EV factory in Indonesia. I'm wondering if they're going to put up both. I wonder if they're going to do a mega pack and an EV factory in Indonesia. Because
that would not surprise me.
Because mega packs on that side of the world, knowing that Australia is big on it, I don't know if Australia would make sense to put a factory there. But putting the two together in Indonesia, that would be massive. And they would definitely handle, if any turmoil went on in China, they've got it covered in Indonesia. It's got to be in another country outside of China just as a backup plan for whatever reason. And then to have mega packs over there as well. Again, Indonesia, you've got Thailand, all these places that have, you know, really rough grids that they're dealing with could really benefit from mega packs. So that could be huge.
Yeah. And putting them together would make sense to me because you would have, if you need to fly people over, you fly them once. They can do the job, 2 jobs at once. And the only, the big thing people were saying about Megapack in Indonesia is that they've got a lot of nickel, but the Megapacks no longer use nickel chemistry. They use the LFPs.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure Tesla would be making their own batteries. I think they would still be buying them from CATL. But one thing about companies like CATL and BYD is anywhere their products are needed, they will build a factory. Mm-hmm. And CATL Panasonic. I want to say somebody recently announced a new battery factory, maybe in Indonesia or maybe Thailand. I'm not sure now, but
oh, really? Because I heard about the one I heard about the VW in Canada, but I haven't heard about.
No, this isn't a car company making batteries. It's one of the battery companies. Huh. And But they're building factories everywhere all the time because this
Oh
is
yeah.
the future. Get on
Oh,
board,
absolutely.
old man, I always say.
So this is actually thinking about this for myself for the future, thinking about, you know, if I like my friends told me back in 2016, 2017, you want to buy real estate in Austin. It's going to become the new Silicon Valley. I did not have the funds to be able to do that, but now we look back and absolutely that's where you wanted to buy real estate. So I've actually looked at Indonesia for real estate. It's not easy for somebody from the outside to buy property there. You have to, I think minimum is like $600,000 you have to spend to get property there as somebody who's not a resident. But I looked at maybe I can do a little bit of monetary change and do a little foreign exchange and get some rupiah. Because I'm like, right now, it's almost like buying cryptocurrency. It's like half a cent for rupiah. And I'm like, if I do that and I buy myself it like I'm buying cryptocurrency, if Tesla ends up opening up a factory over there, then we have CATL go in over there. Their whole entire economy could boom. And that investment in the foreign currency could be very worth it. Obviously, very risky, not financial advice, but it's something I've looked into as a potential for the future. Because if that, look about things, you look at areas that are ripe for disruption. Africa, what do they have for vehicles there? Some areas in South America, like Brazil, Starlink went down there. They provided internet for the first time for schools that have never had it. There's some areas that don't even have electricity. So thinking about all the areas of the world that Tesla can go to because they have this ability, those are the areas you want to look to for future development in the world.
Yeah. And a question was asked in the comments of one of my videos. They were saying, South America doesn't have the charging infrastructure. How will they get by? And the answer is the US didn't have the charging infrastructure. China didn't have it. Europe didn't have it.
Nope.
Now, hopefully, the advantage Europe has is that they had 10 different companies and 15 different countries all pushing it at the same time. But for South America, for Africa, the market itself can do quite a bit of work in terms of filling it out. And Tesla can be a big, big chunk of that. And probably would. And they may even make it so that they're open, that the network is open to everyone from day one. Maybe, why not? And there could be a variety of incentives in these various countries that would help do it to get them access to these vehicles from day one. And the big difference between vehicles that would be built for sale in the US and Europe, and for that matter, China, versus India or Africa or South America, is in India, I've been told by Indian viewers, you need another 2 inches of ground clearance because of the poor state of the roads. If you just jack up a Model 3 by 2 inches, it's going to look funny. But if you purpose build it 2 inches taller, you're done. It's good.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. And, then you also look at the infrastructure, like look at Thailand. That their grid is really rough over there, but they're doing extremely well with EVs. How could you possibly do well with an electric vehicle when your grid is that unstable? Well, guess what? Tesla goes in there with megapacks. Guess who just stabilized the grid? I mean, it's pretty easy to see that. And that's some things that a lot of people on the Tesla Q side of the world aren't grasping is, all these people come out and say, oh, look at how dirty EVs are. Nobody talks about the mines and the coal and everything is like, well, why aren't we just upgrading that too? Like, that's exactly what the plan is. It's like, we're not trying to leave the old crappy, dirty ways. We're trying to change that too. That's actually the real goal that we're trying to change. The EVs are just the, lead into it. That's all.
Yeah. And the study after study shows, even if it's a coal-fired plant, it results in less emissions than just burning the splody juice.
Yeah. Seriously. Question here from Didi. Does anyone know the report deliveries next date? April 2nd will be the date. Typically on the 2nd of the first month after the quarter ends is when they release it. So we should see it on April 2nd. So that's a Sunday. I know it's a Sunday because on April 1st, I am taking my son to see the first Yankee game of the year for us at home on the weekend. So that'll be fun.
Nice. Will you be back home on the 2nd?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
It's because I always cover the delivery report. Last quarter, I think my show ended up being 2.5 hours waiting for it to come out. We were very excited when it did. You're welcome to join me on my show. You've done that once before. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll let you know because I got to check my son's schedule because I know he's got a soccer game that day, and of course we never know when it's going to be out. But yeah, you know what? I'll, even if I'm on the road or whatever, and I can hop on while I'm driving, I could do that. Certainly.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Now that
And
my kid drives, maybe he'll be driving. And I'll be
that'd
on.
be nice. That'd be nice. My kids are afraid to drive. It's very frustrating for
Interesting.
road trips. Makes it
Well,
very, very challenging.
You know what? Just wait a couple of years and they won't have to, because the car will drive for you.
I know, and it's very exciting. And so let's see. What else were we saying? Anybody got questions? Get them in.
Yeah, there we go. Raymond, what about the lithium refinery?
Oh.
Does the Corpus Christi capacity handle the projected growth? I would imagine. I mean, this is where Tesla and Elon are the strongest. You know, back in 2013, they predicted 500,000 vehicles getting delivered in 2020, and they were spot on. Like, when it comes to those numbers that they can really control based upon production and basically deliveries, those are spot on. So when they've done the math as to this is what our production numbers are forecast to be, this is what we're going to need for materials. Yes, I have no doubt that they have planned that to hit that projected growth.
So I would go at it the other way and say it's not going to meet expectations as quickly as expected, because apparently the reason they're doing their own refinery is because they have a new method, and new methods always result in delays. But lithium, yeah, they've got their own new method that's going to be way better. And who knows? Sometimes those work great, but there's always something goes wrong. But lithium is not as big of a bottleneck as people like to think. They say, well, if you look at how much lithium there is and how much it produces and all that, you can't just ramp it up. And it depends what you're getting it from. Chile can absolutely ramp up lithium production because all they need is more ponds in which to evaporate it. Whereas if we're talking getting it from hard rock, spodumene, whatever, it's a lot more labor intensive. It's a lot more equipment intensive, and it takes a lot more work. So it's not... I don't believe lithium is going to be the bottleneck. And now we know cobalt isn't going to be the bottleneck. And lithium prices have fallen back to what they were 2 years ago. They're down massively in the last few months. And I think a lot of that was driven by speculation. But who knows?
Well, and speculation, then we have to remember, like, all the big game that Legacy Auto was talking about, their production and all the vehicles they wanted to come out with. And now here they are like, whoa, well, maybe we're not going to have these numbers and we're kind of backing off. And so I'm sure that did it a little bit too. So,
yeah. Yep.
There you go. Power Pound. Brian, I may have missed. Will you do a floor plan completion graphic for Mexico? Sounds like
I gotta. I gotta. Yeah, because I had fun with that last time. And this will be my... I did a mini tracker for the cathode building, but this will be another mega tracker. And since I'm starting from nothing, I'm going to start with the deadlines will be, instead of saying when it will be done, I'll say what we need to see each week to get it done on the 9-month and 12-month schedule. And then as it starts to flesh out a bit, then we'll start saying where I think it's going to be. Nice. So yeah, absolutely. My math on those, man, I got so much grief in the early days. You can't possibly, and I came out to within, I don't remember, 14 days or something ridiculous. It was very good. It was very nice. Accurate.
Raymond, volume production. Yes. Volume production is 5,000 per week. That is correct.
I would agree, except for models S and X, which are not meant to be 5,000 a week.
Right.
But I would say for every other vehicle, 5,000 is certainly the target. If you get to 2,000 or 3,000 while ramping, I'd say you're definitely in volume production. But I think 5 is right. My question for you, what do you think nameplate capacity for Giga Mexico will be on just the first model?
And when you say nameplate, so looking for full capacity for the factory?
Yeah. This is how many we say we can make with this factory.
So I'm going to go based upon the fact that they have started every other factory recently with a base of 500,000. This one's going to be produced at half the cost at twice the speed. I'm going to go with 1 million.
I think you're right. I think the initial volume will be, they might say 500, but it's absolutely 1 million because it's going to be as big as Giga Texas. For that matter, they say Giga Texas has a capacity of like 600 plus or 700. That's a 1 million car factory, my friend.
Oh, easily. And that's just what they have right now. That's not even the full footprint of what they've got.
Well, once Cybertruck is going, I think Cybertruck alone, they could make $1 million out of that facility.
Oh, yeah.
Plus whatever they're doing with Model Y, plus any efficiencies gained along the way. I think 1 to 2 million per phase of Giga Mexico is what we're looking at, and really probably closer to 2 when it finally reaches its absolute capacity.
Oh, yeah. I think you're absolutely right with that. And Karav just came out with his estimates of 430,000, so right around where I'm at.
So I'm looking loco.
Oh, yeah. But that's okay.
And Karav, are you doing production or delivery? We'll get that in a second.
Yeah, we'll get
it's got to get to him first.
So
I don't know why I was waiting like it's a conversation. Apologies.
So now looking at Mexico, what do you think? What I'm personally thinking we're gonna have 2 models that are going to be coming out of there. What do you think we're going to be seeing out of that factory?
So it's going to be 1 model for sure, right out of the gate. I think there's a very real possibility we see variations on that 1 model where it's a platform, but 3 cars. Why not a compact sedan, a hatch, and a microbus? Why not? It could be all those things. But I do suspect we may also see the van come out of there.
That's my guess. So obviously we know the next gen platform. And looking at, Model 3Y, my thoughts were, and of course we saw the 2 uncovered models that were in the little display that they had put up. So I'm thinking obviously compact car is going to be top one. I have no doubt that's going to be the first on their line of things to come out, because looking at the overall economy, and of course nobody can predict what's going to happen, but if Elon's mindset is we could be potentially getting into a bad recession, during a recession, you're not going to want to be selling expensive vehicles, despite the fact that even luxury vehicles usually sell better and you don't get hit as hard. He's still going to want to sell to the masses. In order to do that, you need a much lower priced vehicle to get to that larger total addressable market. They do that. Now here we are, end of 2024, pushing into 2025. You've got, hey, guess what? A super affordable EV when the world is now transitioning over even faster to EVs. They've got this scooped up. So I think that's going to be the first one. And then I'm wondering if the van and Robotaxi are basically going to be the same footprint, and they're just going to pop a different shell on it for different stuff. Personally, I want the van. I'm jonesing for it. I've got my Model Y on order and a Cybertruck on order, but I'll tell you what, as soon as they announce that van, I'm going to be like first in line for that thing, because I plan on living in it. And that's where I'm going to be going. So
I think how much money you'll save.
Well, so I was actually talking to a friend who's doing the van life, and she's like, worst case scenario, including if you drive across country, $2,500 a month. And I'm like, that's such a low cost of living compared to what I have now. And I cut all my expenses, but a lot of mine are also investments. But I was like, dang, yeah. And then not having to spend on gas because it's an EV. So I'm really excited about that. That one, I think, and I think that's what Franz was alluding to when he said, he's got the vehicle that he's most excited about hasn't even been announced yet. I have a feeling a highly configurable van is what he is excited about.
I took it to mean it was the compact model, but we'll see. And the big thing, I think, and I disagree with, I think, everyone on this, is when they say the Robotaxi, I assume what they mean is every model. Every model is the Robotaxi.
I've been torn with that as well, but Elon did say that the Robotaxi specifically was going to be a vehicle made without a steering wheel and pedals and be a totally different shape, similar to what we have already seen before. That's the only reason I moved away from that initial mentality. But we've also seen, these different patents coming out, because, you've got steering that's all driven without a whole entire steering column, because you have this technology that can talk to it. It's so easy to remove that. So you can easily be making a vehicle with or without same shell. Now we just don't have the steering wheel and pedals. And when we put the seats into it, instead of them all facing forward, they're going to be facing each other. So the back seats stay the same. The front seats just turn around and give you more room. So that could totally be true. And And again, thinking about the next gen platform, how they laid it out, it's exactly what we had talked about previously, which is it's like a friggin' Matchbox car. Here's your bottom, here's your shell, boom, you're done. Like that's how they're putting them together. I mean,
there was a good question a minute ago about sodium batteries. If we would like to address that.
Yeah, there was actually another one I was going to get to also. Let me do this.
Marty
one
Party
here.
asked about. There it is.
We'll do this one. When do you think Tesla
Sure.
will expand the Superchargers network to non-Teslas beyond the current 11 locations?
All the time. I think it's probably ongoing, and if it's not, they were just waiting to make sure there were no unintended issues that arose through the network or the software, the management system.
Right.
And that once it's ironed out, it'll go wide, and it'll go wide quickly.
Yes, and I think
may not go to every location. I think it's possible that the highest volume locations that are already full may not get them. But
yeah, and I was thinking too that they wanted to be, still honor some of the Tesla owners out there, because that's one of the convenience of being a Tesla owner is you don't have to worry about other vehicles coming in. There's more room for you. I was actually curious as to whether they're going to make it, and I guess it maybe doesn't make sense, but if they had like, hey, here's a station with 12 chargers at it, and we're going to open up 3 of them to everyone else, but the other 9 are for Teslas only. I don't know if that's something they would even do or if that would be too confusing. I don't know.
I think it'd be too confusing. Yeah. I think it'd be too confusing.
Karav, when do you guys think we'll reach 500,000 deliveries in a quarter?
This quarter or next? I think next, probably.
I was going either Q2 or Q3. That's my thoughts.
Yeah. Yeah. We're right there.
Yeah.
You're giving us softballs,
Marty, here we go. Don't you think most battery storage will use sodium-ion batteries, thus freeing up lithium for vehicles?
So I have an answer. The reason lithium iron phosphate took a while to get adopted was because despite the improved cycle life, the energy density is lower. So you end up with a heavier battery to get less juice. Sodium ion is yet less energy dense. So what I see happening is that all the LFPs, all of the lithium iron phosphate batteries that are currently going into megapacks can go into compact cars, and the sodium ion batteries can go into megapacks, where weight is less consequential for stationary storage. What do you think of that?
Very true. That makes a lot of sense. And I know that's why they ended up going with the LFPs in the megapacks anyway, was just for that reason.
The higher cycle life is so valuable on a battery that's going to be used every day, all day for 20 years.
Yeah. And
being able to charge all the way from 0 to 100 rather than having to baby it 20 to 80 or 90 to 10.
Oh yeah.
There's just being able, that was the saving grace of LFP, is that even though it has less energy density, even though you have theoretically less range, in practice, you don't have that much less because you are charging to 95%, 100%.
Yeah.
And that helps.
Oh, yeah. Now we'll jump to this, which is always a shot in the dark. What's your price prediction for Tesla at the end of 2023?
I don't do price predictions because the market is irrational.
Seriously.
I always look at things on a 10-year horizon. And my answer is Tesla will be worth more in 10 years than it is today, because it's not the next GM. It's not the next Apple or Google. It's the next East India Trading Company.
I couldn't agree more. That is spot on. I think you are absolutely right with that. And I mean, and I do price predictions for the end of the year. And right now I have it at 247, but it's so tough to determine because the range could be anywhere depending on how the economy goes, if the Fed pivots. Brian, so I had Adam on here a while ago watching the market itself and just seeing how it trades when it goes to interest rates and how the Fed changes interest rates. And everybody's mentality was, well, when the Fed pivots, we're going to see the stock market rally. That's actually not true historically. Historically, when the Fed pauses, we see a massive rally, potentially to all-time highs. When the Fed pivots, we see a crash into recession. So
that's interesting.
Yeah, that was totally contradictory to what my thought was on all of this. So if that's what we are going to see playing out, we could be seeing maybe all-time highs in Tesla by the end of this year because the Fed, theoretically, based upon what they've told us, will be pausing. If the Fed is pausing between now and the end of the year, we see that massive rally, and then anticipating a Fed pivot at that point, we may end up seeing that recession kick in and then the stock price tank in 2024, which will just blow everybody's mind thinking about what's going on with Tesla themselves. So,
and all of this still assumes some level of rational thinking. Let's go back 14 months. If I had said to you, I'm from the future, Tesla's at 400 a share right now. I am from the future. I can tell you every quarter for the next 14 months will be a record. The profit will remain very high and very strong. Cash flow will increase. The new factories will be ramping. New factories will be announced. New products and philosophies and design development will be announced. What would your prediction for the stock price have been?
Oh,
you'd have said it's going up. It's going to go up. We're at 400. We'll be at 800. And here we are at
half of it, less than half.
Yeah. So I applaud your bravery in trying to predict the unpredictable, but that is not a place where I shall join you.
Yeah. It's absolutely, it is madness. It is. But it's fun to shoot it out there. Production. So Karav's got production at 459.
Yeah, I did see that. And that's a pretty widespread between production and delivery. I don't know if they can keep building up inventory the way they have over the past few quarters, but it'll be interesting to see.
So one of the things that I want to pay attention to also with these discrepancies like we saw last quarter and potentially this quarter is what's the percentage of carryover inventory? Because obviously as they're producing more and they're delivering more, even if the number grows, if the percentage is shrinking, that could make a difference because it just means they're going to sell them faster. So, I want to see what the percentage discrepancy is going to be.
What you're asking is days of inventory, not total units.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And if it were solid at 10 days of inventory, that number would grow every quarter because production's growing.
Exactly.
So it'll be interesting to see. But we've been at some very low numbers in the past. 3 days at one point, 7 days at one point. That's not sustainable. And you lose a lot of sales from having such little inventory because there are people who need a car today. I got in a wreck. My motor blew.
Yeah, and in the last year, that was my whole thing when everybody was getting, in such an uproar about, inventory climbing. I go, it's like, it's okay. I'm like, I had to wait a year when I initially placed mine at the end of 2021. And I'm like, do you realize how insane that is for somebody who's like, oh, my car just shit the bed. I need to go get one right now. I can't place an order for a Tesla because I can't get one. So having inventory is actually a very good thing.
Yeah. Having a reasonable amount of inventory is a very good thing. And if you've got a fleet buyer who all of a sudden decides I need 30 of something, are they going to wait 6 months to get 10 of them?
Oh, exactly. Because some of these guys all of a sudden they're like, hey, we had a much more profitable quarter than we had anticipated. Let's, invest it into our fleet. Here we go. It just makes sense. And I mean, it actually, without even realizing it, it opens up a larger total addressable market because there's the addressable market of the people who need a car right now. And that didn't exist before.
Yeah. Now, there are some cars you will find in inventory where the buyer's financing fell through, or maybe they rejected the car at delivery. But that's an unreliable way to try and shop.
Oh, yeah. A Stony like the van. So here we go. We're going to have it here. Scooby-Doo 2028, the mystery machine's going to be a Tesla.
Oh, wow. I like that. I was going to say semi-roadster, Smokey and the Bandit's back, all electric. Yes, literally, that's what I mean is a microbus. The Nissan Quest is built on the Altima platform. The Honda Odyssey is built on the Accord platform. The Toyota Sienna, I think, is built on the Camry platform. Actually, that one might be a dedicated platform, but it's very commonly done. And if you look at something the size of the ID Buzz, that's a nice small van that fills a gap in the market, both for city delivery use and as a passenger vehicle. I think it's something that's overdue and necessary. And yes, a mystery machine. Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. See, and for me, I'm also thinking they're going to be doing like the Ram 2500 or the Mercedes, the heck is it called?
Sprinter?
Yeah, the Sprinter vans. Yeah. So I think absolutely that's what's going to be. And that's why I plan on buying one because that's it. And then here it is.
There's big. There it is.
That's exactly what it's going to be. You'll have a solar panel on the top, just like the Cybertruck's going to have with its tonneau cover, its cover coming down. They're going to have that. They're going to have a Starlink package in it. I have no doubt. And it's all going to be built into one.
Yeah. Yeah. And why not? Why not?
I'm actually waiting to see, because I've seen so many renderings of it, is the semi RV.
Oh, yeah. That's going to be beautiful, but you need a Class 8 license to drive it. So that will limit the market. Oh, yeah. It is a semi. It is a Class 8 vehicle. So
but I wonder, but because now, like, obviously to drive a motorhome, you don't need one. You don't need a CDL. So would they be able to work it out where you wouldn't need one? Like, how could they even make that happen if it's basically the same? Or would it have to be a totally different platform?
I don't know. Maybe it's the double axles in the back that make the difference. I don't know. But
I'll ask Elon next time I talk to him.
Oh yeah, me too. I'll ask him when I see him at the Whole Foods, I guess. Yeah. So we're getting comments saying, yeah, we need a transit van. We need a big one and a little one. And the big one, I think, is going to be not quite as big as the Sprinter or the Ford e-Transit, because
it'll be like the VW bus.
No, it might. I think there might be a little one and a big one, but the big one still won't be that big because it has to fit in a boring tunnel.
Oh yeah, that's true.
It's the shuttle bus.
See, and then like here, the Robotaxi is a van that will have individual pods for passengers. Too much. Actually, that's a good thought too. I didn't even think about that.
Oh,
see, my thoughts on the Robotaxi, knowing how the intention is to obviously have no pedals or steering wheel, knowing that they have some of these type of vehicles already at airports, the regulations at airports aren't going to be the same as they are on cities and highways. So they theoretically could put them out there. We might actually see robo-taxis on factories first, just like Optimus will be there. We may see it shuttling people around in the parking lots to learn how these things work. Then they're going to go to airports. Then they're going to go to stadiums and different things like that. And then they'll probably, my thought is by then, Waymo and Cruise, despite what they're doing right now, it's still at least getting people comfortable with getting into a vehicle without a steering wheel, without a driver. So people are now getting accustomed to this. Once people are more used to it, more people are going to be asking for it. And then we'll see the technology and all that move forward. So then getting to that point where if we have these out there, that's actually not too bad. You can say, hey, I want to call one, and hey, here's your pod, and you go into it, and you can have your still own little section in your Robotaxi. You just put where you want to go. That's very futuristic, and I like that idea.
It is very futuristic. I would agree.
Let's see what else we got here. There's so many questions. You guys are awesome tonight. Thank you.
William's got a good one.
Where is
near the bottom?
Wow. There's so many.
What about selling skateboards and cameras to other OEMs for their uses? I think that's something. Did you find it? It's near the bottom. What? It's right above Marty saying Cybertruck will replace the F-150.
Oh, hey, there we go. What about selling skateboards and cameras to other OEMs for their uses?
So I think on that, that's something you do when you run out of demand. And I think Tesla wants 5,000-10,000 profit on a cheap car, and that they couldn't get it by selling the skateboard. And I think getting the OEMs to not be a huge pain in the ass when it comes to configuring the cameras and making the self-driving work, I think they would be too much of a pain in the ass. Now, Tesla is the first to market and the other guys don't catch up immediately. I could see them licensing it with something insane like, you pay me $10,000 for it. Oh, and also I get to keep the subscription fee. Where it would be a straight up bad deal for the other guys, but they might have to take it if they want in.
Oh yeah. And so that's my thought too. And I thought about like maybe an Apple. If an Apple is actually going to be putting out a car, it may be more beneficial for them to say, you know what, give me your skateboard. We'll throw on the shell and go from there. But even the shell, I don't know what part is harder. Is the skateboard harder or is the shell harder to put on there? I don't know. I think from Apple's standpoint, it would make more sense to just them provide the software and maybe the entertainment center, whatever, was on the inside of it would make more sense. And have an NVIDIA do the same thing. But who knows? Like you said, if we have other automotive makers who just can't figure it out and they start getting left in the dust, they might end up going that route.
Yeah. And a number of companies have abandoned their self-driving ambitions since Autonomy Day. We
Yep.
saw, and what I think happened is you saw Autonomy Day. It was a lot to wrap your head around. And maybe the executives looked at it and didn't quite understand it, but they showed it to their engineering teams who said, oh my goodness, if this is the amount of data and the amount of effort and the amount of processing that Tesla's doing, and they haven't broken it yet, we're not going to get there either. And that's why Argo AI, Ford, and Volkswagen pulled their money out and said,
Yep.
we're done. We can't compete. George
Yeah.
Hotz stepped down as CEO of Comma AI, which
Yeah.
he started.
And then went over to Twitter and
well,
sort
he
of.
may have. We don't know. But
that makes,
yeah.
I mean, you're so true. You're so right, because if you think about it, like, these companies are coming out there, and at that time, everybody was like, this is the technology we need to get into. Tesla then showed, this is where we're at. We are having troubles, and we have way more resources than everyone else, and we still don't have enough coming in to make it happen. And people are like, if you guys aren't doing it, how are we possibly going to get the same resources to make this happen? We can't.
Right. There was a funny conversation I had with a guy a few days ago about Mercedes level 3. He said Mercedes has already got level 3 and Tesla's stuck at level 2. I said, no, Tesla's not stuck at level 2. They are taking an all of the above approach that will work everywhere. Mercedes put so many restrictions on their level 3, it can't work. It can't scale. And I said, it just can't. It's got all. He goes, no, those are regulations. That's the law. This is Nevada, my friend. There are no regulations on autonomous vehicles. Literally, that it's not regulations. Yeah. It's that the company can't assume the risk if they try to go any faster. Because if there's an accident, if your Mercedes plows into someone at 40, no one's going to die. Try it again at 70, someone's going to die.
Yeah.
Well, or the likelihood goes up exponentially. And I said, their hardware can't do more than what it already does. They don't have the compute power. They don't have the 10 billion hours of simulation and billion hours of real driving. They don't have it.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the piece that a lot of people are missing is, like Elon said, they kept on, getting up and they hit a ceiling. And a lot of times you can push through that ceiling, but when it came to FSD, you can't. And you have to scrap what you've got and basically start over again to get through that. So when you're trying to set a limit and say we're starting at level 3, it's like you've already put a cap on yourself. That's where Tesla finally learns that you can't shoot for a certain level. You got to march the 9s. That's why they have that. And they're continually going to improve. And it's never going to stop improving. It's going to always improve. So they're not shooting for level 3 or level 4. They're shooting for level 5 to be handled everywhere. So it's not like Waymo and Cruise who are like, hey, we're geofenced to this area. We're going to make sure we map this out perfectly so that it can handle it there. So,
and even still it struggles. And that's the problem is a number of people complain, say, oh, we were promised a cross-country drive 4 years ago, something, whatever it was. Why haven't they done that? And the answer is, if you want them to cheat to just that test, they could have passed that test years ago. Just map that one that one route, that one path, and they could have done it. But that would have taken a huge amount of resources to solve a problem for one road. How many roads we've got? I have it on good authority. It's more than 2.
It's like at least 3.
It's at least 3. You can fact check me, but if it's less than 3, I'll be very surprised.
One thing I would actually be interested to see is every quarter somebody does a cross-country drive and say, hey, how many interventions did we need to make on that cross-country drive, and see how that improves each and every time.
Boy, that'd be a good one.
So I'll put it on Omar and see if he wants to run it out there.
He does do a lot of drives, but even for him, that seems like that would be an awfully big ask.
And him doing it the way he does it is good, because he runs a lot of times the same areas over and over and over again to see the improvements in those specific areas. Marty here, will Optimus be used in new compact manufacturing process?
No.
Really? You don't think so?
No, because it's going to take quite a bit of time for it to become as efficient as a quick human. And I think it would slow things down at a time when they're trying to speed things up. I think it would take I think it'd be better suited in perhaps other factories doing simpler tasks, like Gigafactory in Nevada, maybe just moving batteries around or something.
Right.
But I think Giga Mexico is going to be too frantic, too high paced for a Gen 2 or 3 bot to handle. That's my
actually
belief.
a great point, because my thought is why would they not start it? No, obviously we've got basically a year and a half or so before we really get to production on it. So that would be a good chunk of time for them to improve Optimus. But again, based upon what we saw at Investor Day, would it be ready for that? That, you bring up a good point. So maybe Lathrop is the better place for them to do that. And again, I think that's what they're going to start at. Wherever they start at, it's going to be moving parts from point A to point B. Here's a cart of trash that we're taking out. Something simple like that, I think, is absolutely going to be the first role that Optimus will play in the factories. And then from there, it'll start to learn with the whole FSD. Because don't forget, these are all cogs that are working at the same time in unison. As FSD gets better, that means it's going to get better for Optimus at the same time. What is this? Sorry, had to pop up. That means that it's all going to happen at the same time. So FSD gets better, Optimus is going to get better. You then start putting Optimus in the factory. It has all new data coming in from a humanoid standpoint to bring in new information, and then that's going to grow from there. So yeah, that's a good point, Brian. I didn't even think about the fact that it might actually slow production down, because it might not be to where we could be. At that point, Optimus isn't going to be better than a human. Not yet.
Right. Yeah, and labor is quite reasonable in Mexico. So it's not like it would be replacing a $30 or $50 an hour worker. So it'd be more like 5 to 10.
Oh, yeah. And then Hanif here with a great comment. Won't semi drive itself? I still need a license. No, actually, in that case, if it is on FSD and full self-driving and it's regulated, then absolutely not. You won't need that. So that's a good point.
Yeah, I don't make predictions on when level 5 is coming.
Yeah,
because it's
regulations are the hard
it's
one.
it's on the other side of the horizon.
Yeah.
Until we can see it on the horizon, it's unknowable. It could be 6 months. It could be 6 years. I don't know.
Yeah, and that to me is the same thing. And even Elon, and when everybody gives me grief and say, "Well, Elon promised it for then," and I go, Elon, what I love about him, and some people just don't grasp this concept, because a lot of company business owners and managers don't behave this way. He will make predictions. He is bold and direct, and if he's wrong, he'll admit he's wrong, and he'll explain why he was wrong and explain what they're doing to correct what they were wrong about. And not many people understand that.
The thing that frustrates me is everyone who says he promised self-driving. No, he didn't. He said we expect. That's not a promise, my friend. That is an anticipation. And if you go back to 2009 to 2012, 13, everyone working in autonomy was convinced it would be solved by them and everyone else by 2020.
Yep.
The entire industry got it wrong. Everyone. So
I remember there was at least 5 companies that I read of, because somebody made an article about it. 5 companies who had said in 2016 that by 2020 FSD was going to be solved. And guess what? Brian named off 2 of them that no longer are even trying for it. So
yeah. And Nissan kept reiterating through about 2016 that they were going to have level 4 or 5 by 2020. And then they just quietly stopped talking about it because it is that difficult.
Yeah.
And I believe Mercedes also stepped back from their in-house autonomy ambitions. Not Mercedes, sorry, BMW stepped back from theirs. It's impossible until it isn't, and then it'll be solved.
Yeah. And honestly, I think a company like NVIDIA might actually do it for other people, but they would have to partner with other manufacturers to be able to get that real world data, and that's going to be the challenge for them.
And then you've got to make it configurable for every vehicle, and then you've got to, and then NVIDIA's got to get their cut over and above the manufacturer getting theirs.
Right. And who's going to provide the hardware for it? Is NVIDIA going to provide the hardware because they've got the software that runs in it? And they're going to say, hey, well, you need to have our hardware, because if we have to now configure our software to 7 different hardware platforms, how is that going to work?
It just looks like a mess, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. That whole vertical integration thing sounds better and better every day.
If Tesla gets to the point, if let's say, and I may have told you this, I know I've said it on my channel before, if Waymo and Cruise both solve autonomy today and Tesla's not there, and Tesla doesn't get it theirs finished for another full year, Tesla wins.
Yep.
Because it'll take another 2 years for Waymo and Cruise to get any vehicles into mass production. And Tesla will already have 6-7 million vehicles on the road that they can just switch it on.
Yep.
And if you don't want autonomy, that's great, because guess what? Somebody might pay you $50,000 more than you paid to get the car so that their grandma can go to the shops without supervision.
Oh yeah, somebody had mentioned that on Twitter today. And when they talked about FSD, that was one of the number one reasons I loved it, because there's a lot of, elderly people out there who still want to get around. They're not comfortable driving in the dark. They don't like driving in the rain. They don't like driving in general because they don't feel comfortable on the road anymore. So to be able to have a vehicle, be able to do this for them, and it's going to be a learning curve, because I don't know if anybody else saw the video out there of the 2 older guys who got into a self-driving vehicle and they're totally blown away by it. But if we can start getting into that place, we're going to have the largest generation, the boomer generation, is going to be getting to a point where they're going to want that assistance. And I think this is awesome for them to be able to have that option out there.
Yeah. And I have very high hopes. I was at a EVs and caffeine event on Saturday put on by the Southwest Washington Tesla Club in Vancouver. And they said, one of the guys said how exciting it is. I think it was David Huber said how exciting it is to live in the future. We've got rockets that land themselves, cars that mostly drive themselves. It's now. Roads are getting quieter. Air is getting cleaner.
Yeah. Like it's happening and we're living through it. It's awesome.
It's exciting.
There we go. Will Elon sell more Tesla tequila when Giga Mexico opens?
Of course.
And now let's go into conspiracy theory here.
Uh-oh, here we go.
When did Elon first start selling Tesla tequila?
Oh, I don't remember. When was it?
If you guys know, let us know in the comments. My theory is maybe he knew it was going to be Mexico when he released the Tesla tequila the first time. And that was that little Easter egg that we just didn't know about. So maybe burnt hair is an Easter egg for a future factory location, and we just don't know it yet.
He also played the mariachis with a mariachi band when the Morocco's, back when the company was listed publicly, when it went public or something. That was maybe it was the Model S event. So he's been teasing it for a long time.
A decade. He's been holding it back.
It's been very, very sneaky. I think the rabbit hole is not as deep as you think. I think you're going to twist an ankle. And that's about it.
Let's see. Just a couple
burnt
of
hair. Where would that be? New Jersey, I suppose. Giga, New Jersey.
Oh, here, honey, if you're on fire today. First, Herbert Diess is fired. Toyota resigns. Is Mary Barra coming next? I don't know.
They seem very comfortable with her incompetence.
Yeah. Wow. You just said that so smoothly.
Well, I've got enough experience seeing how they're run. That's.
Oh, yeah. And then we've got one of our own sort of insiders with some legacy info. I don't disclose information on that, but he fills us in on a lot of what's going on, and it's kind of ugly on legacy side. A couple more questions here, and then we'll pop off. Let's see. Honey.
Oh, yeah, we're about to pop off.
I need financial advice. Well, you can't get financial advice here because we don't give that, but we'll give our best guesstimates. What will all the retail investors do with all the money we make off of our Tesla shares when Tesla destroys all the OEMs and runs the planet? So actually, that's not a bad question. I've had a lot of people, and I've thought about it myself. I'm like, yes, I plan on buying and holding for at least 10 years. Who knows what's going to happen at that point? I'll reassess when we get further down the road. But sure, you can buy and hold. But if we're planning on holding these shares to be able to have wealth in the future, are you just going to keep buying? Are you going to sell? What do we do with those shares? Tesla has said that they're not planning on doing dividends, although that did come up on the Q4 earnings call. The investor day. So I'm like, oh, that was the first time they actually mentioned it. Some people play options with it. Some people just use those shares for other reasons. Maybe it's in an IRA you buy and sell and swing. How about you, Brian? What would you do?
I think you're overthinking the question. I think the first answer is we all buy bigger houses and the latest Teslas. Then we put solar roofs on them and power walls. And then with the money left over, just with some of the change you've got, we could each take turns owning legacy car companies as novelties, the way people buy and sell Napster these days. So there's a lot of opportunity. You could open a Blockbuster. Why not?
I mean, I don't know about you, but I'm personally buying a ticket to Mars.
Well, there you go. You could do that with a handful of shares.
Yeah. I will gladly trade you these 7 shares of Tesla for a ticket to Mars.
On Tuesday. Isn't it next Tuesday that Wimpy was going to pay?
Is it Tuesday? Yeah. David, thank you, my friend. It's been such a long time. Wow, what time is it where you are? It's got to be late. Yeah, living off the comfy interest. Yes, absolutely.
For sure.
And either way, whatever you decide to do with your shares, there's a very good chance. Again, nobody knows the future, but there's a very good chance that you will be living financially free. Hopefully, that is the goal from all of this.
So I got a couple quick plugs. One is almost all, I'd say half the people in the chat I recognize. For the other half of you, you're welcome to hang out. I do my live streams on Friday. I do a podcast live on Tuesdays on my second channel, all that good stuff. But at the end of the month, I've got 3 things in rapid succession. The last day of the month, I've got my final production numbers for predictions. On April 1st, I've got a very special morning show that I can't tell you about because it's too exciting. I'll tell you off channel, but it's too exciting. And then on the 2nd, I'm hoping to have special guests, the Oracle himself, Tim, on to hang out and wait for the actual production numbers to see how we did.
Yes,
so
that will be
you guys will check us out for that.
Yeah, and so if you guys aren't following him, he is over My Tesla Weekend over on YouTube. I love that shirt. That's nice.
Yeah, it's not even available anymore. They closed down my store.
Oh no, that's not cool.
Yeah.
And then he's also over on Twitter. I will put both links in the comments after we are done here, down in the description. So otherwise, folks, thanks for hanging out with us tonight. Again, Brian has an open invite, so you may see him on here once in a while. And I will be on again tomorrow night, 6:30 p.m. Eastern time. Otherwise, you guys are awesome, and we will see you in the next one.
Thanks.